Step right up here. Right up and I'll guess your weight. I'll guess your weight for only 599 runes. Error margin of less than 5? Less than 5. Step right up here. 175 pounds. Minus the armor, of course.
Nice try, scam artist. I'm actually 90% helium. Fucking stupid. Number 23, rotten butterflies. Easiest fucking decision I've ever made in my life. Yesterday, I stood bare-assed in front of my window air conditioner unit before considering the non-zero possibility that the general public could in fact glance upon my hairy ass if willing and able. And the subsequent tinge of humiliation I felt in that moment was still much less than when I try to capture good footage of myself using this incantation. You just cannot cast this and look like you know how to play the game. It just doesn't work. The superhuman amount of foresight required to see over 3 fucking seconds into the future to ensure as little resistance as possible is so far out of reach of us normie losers that wasting an uplifting aromatic or a leaden hard tier, God forbid, is almost required, or at least if there isn't a wall nearby to cheekily hit someone through. Number 22, Rellana's Twin Moons. I'd recommend the old endure on a dagger trick to lessen the hyper armor burden when you're in the air, but I actually think the windup for this might last longer than 3 seconds. Not even one of the most reliable weapon ashes in the game can bring this shit heap up to presentable standards. You'll be stuck dodging shockwaves and ground crawlers for the rest of time like the game itself didn't already give you a fucking jump button. But if you're married to the idea of extra verticality, then you might as well just cast something with a bit of range on it, like, I don't know, like the only other 2 moon spells in the entire game. It makes good furnace golem repellent since those lord asses ain't gonna be planning a hiking expedition anytime soon. But if my list of positives for a spell begins and ends at good at taking out things that don't move, then what the hell is even the point? Did this get worse? Nothing about it was changed in 1.13, but I feel like this got worse. Number 21, Light of Miquella. I'm really glad the bug regarding the damage boost on the Circlet of Light finally got ironed out so that I can now confidently say it doesn't mean a shit. Godfrey Icon and Roar Medallion are tapping their feet in the waiting room, but the Circlet called in and made an appointment or something, so that just means he's more important, I guess. It could have been a 50% boost and I still wouldn't see myself rolling around with Light of Miquella as a mainstay. It's just way too expensive. You don't even get it till the end of the whole goddamn game. The secondary bullet rain might as well be a confetti particle effect that slowly outlines the words "you got scammed." And if you're trying to co-op a boss with this in your build, just put it away. I'm serious. I'm so tired of getting summoned in for help, only for the host to shove the Helldiver's orbital laser up my fucking ass when all I'm trying to do is swing a hammer. Just put it away. Number 20, Midra's Flame of Frenzy. Also, if you wouldn't mind hearing a list of other things I'm steadily growing tired of, since apparently that's a selling point for me, not being able to record an ultra high, the growing prices of GPUs, every single frenzy spell being a slightly varied reiteration of weird-ass yellow light beam travels forward and makes lightning sounds for some reason. Fucking economics. I don't know. I can't even call it lazy. You gave Midra all the cool shit like the atomic headbutt and the corkscrew laser, and we're just stuck over here casting the same 7 reproductions of Frenzy Burst. And we can yell really loud. Hope you have the Aged One talisman, because that's really the only thing you're going to be able to use this for. And I'm starting to feel like saying it's good for firing at a dragon's ballsack is really close to becoming the new resetting Frostbite, so I'm just going to save you the trouble on that one. Number 19, Land of Shadow. I can insult it as much as I want, but credit due is credit due. Someone had to suggest this take up 2 slots. I just can't allow my brain to believe there was a unanimous agreement in the office that Elden Stars 2 only needs a single spell slot. That just didn't happen. Someone had to say, hey, this should cost 2, and then Sheldon spoke up for all of us and replied to that email with, hey Mark, that's fucking stupid. And that means they're learning. That means we have a voice. And the incantation is still baked dog ass with a record-breaking heat index, but that's perfectly fine because it is allowed to be. And I'm allowed to recommend choosing the comically oversized sunflower in just about any situation because that is just what you should do. Number 18, Greatsword of Radahn Light. Wow, three options. I need to slow my ass down. I can't handle another all weapons video right now. Why are people saying this hits so much harder after 1.13 like it means anything? Hitting harder than a toddler with a plastic lightsaber and a full diaper is not an accomplishment, let alone something that needs to be repeated in forums. More damage was never going to be the solution here. The root of the problem here might be making a boss with enough visual effects to give professional top-of-the-line GPUs a mental breakdown, because now you've made the mistake of raising the bar to an unrealistic height. You could have had the player using one sword as a surfboard and people still would have been like, not as good as the boss version, because how could it be? How do you even compete with a moveset designed to be a fucking benchmark test for your PC? Number 17, Poleblade of the Bud. We're actually heading up into no longer longer ass territory, so I should probably stop exaggerating my distaste for all these items. Honestly, most of the stuff we've already covered is still just okay. Like, they're remembrance items. That's the whole point. Poleblade of the Bud is, well, judging by the only other option, you're always going to choose it anyway, but once you get past the whole why no scale with arcane business, it's got some pretty decent potential if you offhand it with Antspur Rapier. And with a newly included TPFB Ash, rot builds finally have a future, even if that future is just not having to live in a box somewhere. You have to really dedicate yourself to making it work, but it can work. I would have been just as happy as anyone else if 1.13 gave this toenail some arcane scaling, but, well, that's just not how the world works sometimes. Number 16, the Gazing Finger. Okay, we really just need to stop telling people the unique skill on this only scales with faith, because I'm like 95% sure that's just bullshit. I tested the skill against the same omen under all the same conditions, one with 20 intelligence and 60 faith, and then another with 60 intelligence and 20 faith, and the damage gap was literally just 6. Like, just 6. That was it. In fact, when I took the element scaling ID and plugged it into this parameter here, it has both intelligence and faith checkmarked for magic damage, which is a pretty solid indication that it scales with both. I honestly would prefer it just scale with one or the other, because we already have way too many stat glutton weapons to worry about, like the Royal Greatsword. All it does is make leveling for it a very slow grind, because scaling off of multiple stats like this usually means those scalings are very small. But the tables don't lie, so let's stop telling people this only scales off of faith, okay? Because it literally doesn't. Number 15, Enraged Divine Beast. A remembrance item that can only boost like 8 different moves. Okay, well that's not a good start. No matter how good Stormblade ends up being, the very selective lineup of skills and spells this talisman can boost just means it's more likely to lose against another remembrance reward. However, 10% is 10%. Niche isn't always bad, and if your build is equipped for it, this could very well be the greatest talisman you'll ever run into. My only gripe is that it thematically feels like it should boost a lot more than it does. Thundercloud Form, Vacuum Slice, and Dryleaf Whirlwind, which is literally a synonym for the word storm. I don't know, I'm just being a picky bitch, I guess. This is actually one of the better talismans in the game too. It's just, well, it's never going to win against a corporeal fingernail that shits lightning-infused fire. That whole sentence barely even made sense, and all I did was just describe one of the spells. Generally a good indication that it's worth it. Number 14, Divine Beast Frost Stomp. It's really not that strong unless your intelligence is throttled up to at least the 50s, and the added benefit of it being chargeable does very little to separate it from the vanilla Hoarfrost Stomp. But at this point, man, I'm just glad I found something in the DLC the Godfrey icon actually gets out of bed for. Charging it gets you around 40% more magic damage and over twice the amount of frostbite buildup, meaning it probably has a higher priority as a status tool than it does as a damage option. The Ash of War itself is fine, but a chargeable vanilla skill is honestly incredibly disappointing as a remembrance reward. I'm fine with Hoaraloo's Earthshaker even if no one uses that ash trash, but at least it didn't make me wait for over 2 years just to get to it. Number 13, Bayle's Flame Lightning. Probably the single most tested incantation that's ever come out of the game. Alright, so let's start with the goods. You can turn completely around during the cast, 3 separate damage types, and gets buffed by both the Dragon Communion Seal and the Rock Heart, making it one of the most buffable incantations. Recovery time to cast another spell is surprisingly short once the hit lands. And now for the bads. You can fire it up and go have lunch before it actually connects. No hyper armor at all, or at least not enough. Needs 53 fucking arcane. Requires way too much player accuracy for a remembrance incantation that isn't even dupable. If you think it's good, it's probably because you were just already built for it. If you think it's bad, it's probably because you weren't buffing it correctly. Every argument made for and against it has some arbitrary counter to it that means something to like 5 people. So I think the only objectively correct placement for this reward is just a big ol' who gives a shit. Sometimes fence sitting makes my ass itch, but other times it's just the better place to be. Number 12, Rellana's Twin Blades. See above. Lots of hits, lots of shits. The C scalings across the board when fully upgraded are a little misleading, but not really that much. The scalings translate to 0.67 in strength and dex, and 0.61 in faith and intelligence, technically making it a quality build weapon if your min-maxing fetish is that much of a problem. Both stanced attacks on the skill come up really short with hyper armor, they're highly telegraphed and easy to avoid, and the motion values on the stanced R1 feel especially weak, but the equally dispersed scaling means no build can really go wrong with it either. I don't know, it just feels like another who gives a shit weapon. Picking it up isn't really a bad decision, but if you decide to just crush the remembrance in your hands and get the runes, I can't in good faith say you're missing out on that much. Number 11, Bayle's Tyranny. Still no Roar Medallion? No? Oh, okay. Just asking. Big shockwave still only hits one guy at a time? Yep, alright. Well, this one's gonna be pretty hard to defend, but I'm gonna try anyway. 325 fire damage and 210 lightning damage is incredibly hard to make shitty. And Bayle's Tyranny is not shitty. It's not even mediocre. Like, it's a damn good incantation. Not exactly king shit of fuck mountain, but it's a couple small changes away from mythical tier, at least in my opinion. Not having any interaction with the Roar Medallion honestly doesn't mean much, since it can still be boosted with Dread Talisman, the Rock Heart, any fire and lightning boosting items, tears, talismans, good wishes, thoughts, prayers, whatever. But if I'm given a choice between this and Grail's Roar, I'm sorry, but that's the closest to objective you're going to get in a tier list video. Same amount of slots, comes with a debuff, actually gets boosted by Roar Medallion, bigger shockwave, quicker recovery time, like, it's just better. Number 10, the Vortex of Putrescence. Don't do what I did capturing footage for this and start hugging walls trying to get it to hit twice on a standard-sized enemy, or else you might need to buy yourself a new GPU after your 1060 shit biscuit is done filling its diaper. I've almost crashed my game trying to cast this, and that's not something I can confidently say for any other spell. But the damage got upped from 280 to 328 in the 1.13 patch, and its Frostbite buildup has been upped from 100 to 170. It honestly felt pretty comfortable to use even before, if you weren't in timeout and someone wasn't forcing you to stare at the corner of a wall. It's got hyper armor, it's got cast speed, it's good at punishing overly aggressive players and bosses alike, and if your only gripe with it is its 2-slot requirement, then you might just need to pull up your bootstraps and enjoy completing the side quest of getting the fuck over yourself. Number 9, Greatsword of Radahn, Lord. This weapon skill just fucks. In the direction of up, specifically. As in, it fucks up. It's an up fucker. Breaking down all the motion values and damage numbers of the whole thing is such a long list of values that it actually feels like it would break the pacing of the whole video. So I might just tell my editor to flash up numbers or something here as a little visual graphic while I'm just attacking the air or something. I'm serious, this paragraph would be 2 fucking minutes long if I actually tried to explain to you how this all works. It's holy damage that scales with intelligence. That's just about all you need to know to fully picture this Jackson Pollock-esque mess of balancing and scaling this weapon will continue to be for the rest of time. And it's still one of the best in the game, somehow. With the sheer amount of spam and particle effects these swords throw out, 10,000 damage better be the ground floor. Also, maybe don't give the actual boss so many abilities and attacks that you have to spread them evenly between 3 different remembrance options, 2 of which are just the same asset. What, did all that Scarlet Rot fatten up his fucking swords too? Number 8, the Putrescence Cleaver. When you get past the really bizarre stat choices, this great axe really isn't bad when it comes to just turning a Fire Knight into a flat tire with basic R1s, and all I apparently had to do for it was trade in my spine for a linking of stackable markers from early 2000s elementary schools. You thought you would throw this as a boomerang like the boss? Bitch, you become the boomerang. All it's missing is the ASMR sounding bone cracking noises that play with a volume of firecrackers in a tin skillet. Lace that bitch up with a 0.81 scaling and strength on a +10, and those standard R1s start looking mad powerful. The unique skill scaling exclusively with weapon level also really helps it out with convenience, and the extra frostbite ends up feeling like an accessory to a weapon that's already way too stacked for it to look like an actual 18th century pizza knife. Number 7, Greatsword of Damnation. Supersonic Virgin Ash of War Complainer versus Zeta Chad Claymore moveset enjoyer. There, enjoy your Reddit karma. Wasn't expecting this to be a strength weapon. Usually great swords with pierce damage on it get thrown in the dex pile. Not really a complaint or anything, I'm just really surprised. That Ash of War shits hyper armor, and the corkscrew visual of the greatsword itself perfectly encapsulates the amount of screwed the average duelist is going to be once you resort to such hateful means. Could have gone the extra mile on that heavy animation and had it do the barbed attack the boss does when he thrusts it out, but I think 90% of you just want to hear numbers instead of a balding guy throwing a bitch fit from his single bedroom apartment in Wichita, Kansas. So, fine. The initial plunge has a motion value of 150, and the follow-up AoE has a motion value of 180. If it's a critical hit, it'll be 290, and it gets boosted by the dagger talisman, but not the blade of mercy. Okay, there, whatever, there's your math. Number 6, the Shadow Sunflower Blossom. It's hard not to feel stupid as shit spamming the weapon skill and watching damage rack up into Final Fantasy limit-breaking heights. You know, the more holy-themed weapons I dig up in this DLC, the sorrier I begin to feel for all the Ghost Flame Dragons and the one random Deathrite bird chilling out near Charo's hidden grave. Like, dude's probably just trying to raise his 19 grave bird kids. Leave him the fuck alone, he has enough to deal with. Interestingly enough, the split between physical and holy damage is almost completely evenly split, and even with 80s and all stats across the board with a +10 Blossom, the divide only ever stretches to around 20 points of damage in favor of holy. Number 5, Messmer's Orb. I guess making an animation of my character hyperextending their legs like Mr. fucking Fantastic would have looked too ridiculous for the game. That's the only explanation I can think of for why I keep getting my ankles taken out by sweep attacks. Otherwise, pretty good. The lack of hyper armor is a minor complaint, but it doesn't really kill it, since there ain't no problem a good old bit of spatial awareness can't fix. Most of the time. Flinging yourself into a giant Bayle-sized AoE and expecting good results means you might have problems a guide video won't really be able to fix. And the damage on it is, I don't know, it's fine. It's above average, at least. Still seeing people saying it's piss, and I still just don't see it. But perhaps a little upwards nudge on that player hitbox won't hurt it, especially since the charged animation literally just has you hanging in the air for a good 3 seconds. I swear to God, this wasn't a problem in 1.12, but nothing on the most recent patches say any changes were made to the hitbox of this incantation. So I might have just been yapping, who the fuck knows. Number 4, Blades of Stone. 1.13 was really kind to this sorcery in particular, but I don't think it needed to be. The first hit of the charged attack actually got boosted by around 80 points of damage. Pretty insane. Definitely one of the larger adjustments I've seen come out of a patch. The upward adjustments on this are nice, but adjusting all these values here only further proves that they at least know about the Godfrey problem. Like, there's no way they don't at this point. Offhanding the Meteorite Staff still improves its damage by 30%, which feels that much nicer after 1.13's adjustments, and its total range got extended by around 40% as well, which was one of my biggest gripes with the sorcery on launch. It feels like it can hit things a lot more consistently now, you don't need to space shit out nearly as much, and it can drill a hole into Placidusax's fat, stony ass even faster than before. Number 3, the Sword Lance. Probably the single most general purpose, one-size-fits-all solution for strength builds. That's not a joke or an exaggeration, they really knew what they were doing when they made this weapon. The running R2s mimic that of a spear moveset, giving you multiple hits in a single attack, opening up a lot of room for some really great status builds. You can toss spinning gravity thrust on it and open up that window even more, since the first attack on the Ash has a total status MV of 325 if all the hits connect. I honestly really like what they did with the running R2 because it ends up closing the same amount of distance, if not more, than the standard running R2 on other heavy thrusting swords. The running R2 is kind of a staple of that weapon class too, so replacing this single attack could have easily tits up to the whole thing in so many different ways, but it honestly feels even more comfortable. That scaling on the heavy affinity is actually a 1.74 when fully upgraded, which is 1/100th of a decimal point away from an S, so don't be dissuaded by that A, it is the single most dishonest A in the whole game. If you want high AR, the Sword Lance has it. If you want status, the Sword Lance has it. Number 2, Spear of the Impaler. This spear is just kicking its little feet back and forth in every single power pool in the game. The multi-hit weapon skill is good with the winged sword talismans. The first fire wave on the skill goes way further than most people think, and I don't even see that many NPCs trying to dodge out of its way. The hyper armor is just barely tickling the balls of unfair without actually treading over that line. The charged R2 gets boosted by the smithing talisman since you're throwing the spear. Using said attack on horseback actually makes horse-mounted combat feel fun again, especially against bosses like Commander Gaius. The stat requirements reflect its scalings very well. The entire skill, except for the fire projectile at the beginning, all scales with weapon level, which is always convenient. And fire damage is a really nice way to deal with all the horn-sent enemies in the final DLC area. It's better than good, it's better than great, and if you've been ignoring it this whole time, you're just playing a squarely worse version of the game than the rest of us. Number 1, Staff of the Great Beyond. Firstly, I would sentence all who find this catalyst ugly to 20 years of blindness if your take wasn't already indicative of you staring too long into a solar eclipse. Secondly, I can't in good faith say I actually predicted this, because the only time I bring up the idea of catalysts that can do it all is specifically in a video where I explain why I don't think that would make sense and would result in a shitload of power creep, since there are only 2 branches of spellcasting in Elden Ring. But then they just went on and did it anyway. Fuck the rules, now you can just cast anything you want, on any day, under any condition. This opens up so many ridiculous windows for casting builds. If you're that attached to stacking everything with Golden Vow, or if you like throwing down Terra Magica and then launching into Glintstone Breath, offhanding a second catalyst is no longer needed to make that happen. You'd also expect with this torqued of a catalyst the scaling would be shit, but it's like not? Like it's actually really fucking good for like no reason. 1.38's on both intelligence and faith, which beats out the Gelmir staff by almost 0.2. Obviously, if you're just looking for spell scaling, it's never going to beat out Prince of Death staff, or even half the unique catalysts for that matter if you're properly built for them. But at 40 int and faith, this ends up being the highest scaling staff for hybrid builds at 298. And that's more than any of us honestly deserve from a staff without borders.